I'm here today with Larry Cornett, and we'll be talking about product management as a career. As an introduction, Larry is a highly sought after and accomplished executive. His accomplishments most recently includes VP of Consumer Products for Yahoo, and he's worked with the biggest and best consumer and internet companies such as eBay, Apple, and IBM. He's currently the CEO of Brilliant Forge, focused on product and design advisory services to Fortune 500 and startups. What better person than Larry to give us a perspective on product as a career? He's had various roles in product for the past 16 plus years and has hired some of the best. So welcome, Larry. I'd like to start off by asking you to give us kind of a sense of what is product management? What does it entail?
Sure. Yeah, product management is really what I consider to be the owner of the product and really responsible for shepherding a product through the entire product life cycle. They're really the ones who look for the opportunity and try to map what is the product strategy to the company's business strategy. Take that and actually figure out what is a tangible product you can create from this. And they work very closely with design, they work with engineering, often QA testers and so forth, to take a product through the entire process of design, testing, development, and eventually launching the product. And then the product manager is the one who really keeps an eye on the product even after that to say, how is this performing in the market and what do we need to do to tune it?
So there's watching the creation of the product, and then there's the business aspect.
Absolutely, yes.
So what kind of education requirements does that individual have to have if they have to wear sort of both those hats?
Right. I mean, you see a traditional path with product management, and so many of the product managers that I've worked with and hired have MBAs. So very common, for example, I worked at Yahoo, we hired a lot of Stanford MBAs. But there are non-traditional paths into product management, and so I have seen product managers that have CS degrees, psych degrees, and even have a background in marketing. But an MBA is the traditional path that we usually see.
Okay. Is there certain personality, innate qualities that an individual has to have to be good at this?
The best product managers are the ones who really feel a sense of ownership of that product, and they're very confident about that.
So what about, to me it seems like a lot of details that you have to manage. What about that?
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many things that come up during a product life cycle and so many things that can fall through the cracks. And so you will see that a product manager is extremely detail oriented. They're the ones who are specifying down to the last link, how should this be tracked, what are the metrics that we're looking for so we can understand the performance of this. They're the ones who are pulling up the analytics dashboards every day and looking at, is there something going on that I should be concerned about? They're the ones who are constantly looking at the competitive landscape to say, what is this competitor doing? Why did they launch this product? And so a lot of details, and they tend to be very effective at keeping their finger on the pulse of everything.
Okay. Is there other entry points into product management from within an organization?
Yeah, and it's less common, but there are other entry points, and I've seen that it will happen sometimes out of necessity, sometimes out of desire. So someone would be a designer, for example, or they might be in the marketing side, or they might be an engineer that actually has a good head for product, is very interested in taking a larger sense of ownership over the product. And so there will be cases where there's just so much workload that there's no way to cover a project. And you'll say, hey, you're kind of good at this. Would you be willing to take this on and actually drive it all the way to launch? In other cases, it can be them stepping up and saying, I'd like to learn product management and give me a small project, test me on it, let's see how it goes. And then there's other cases where there's a void. Product leadership disappears at a company, somebody leaves. And it's an opportunity, I think, for someone who feels like this is a path I'm interested in to kind of step up and say, I'm willing to take that on.
So now this product management in technology companies is obviously product management in mobile, various different industries.
Right.
So does the person who's wanting to move into product management or want a job in it, has an MBA, do they have to have that primary discipline like engineering to be in technology as an undergrad? Or
they don't, but it certainly helps. So what I've seen in the technology industry as a product manager is that I like to say you should know enough to be dangerous. So as a product manager, if you have coded before and you have a CS degree, great. But if you don't, learn enough. I mean, learn enough about what's possible, what's not, and know when to ask the tough questions and when to push back. And so if you really want to earn the respect of that engineer on the other side of the table, you should know enough about what their job entails and what's possible so that they can have that conversation with you.
Okay, I love the little story that you told me about.
Yeah.
I want you to repeat it. Can you repeat it?
Sure. So when I first joined Apple, I was a designer, fresh out of school with my PhD, and I didn't have a tech background. I had dabbled a little bit with programming just because I was personally interested in it, but I have a psych degree, so it's very different. And I quickly realized when I was working directly with the engineers that they had a certain degree of respect for somebody who knew the technology of Apple and how the OS worked and everything, and they had a different attitude with somebody who did not. So I bought all the books, all the development books for Apple, and I read them, and I was able to have a conversation with one of my engineering partners where he pushed back. And you find different types of engineers. There's an engineer who loves a challenge, and you say, hey, can we do this? Is it possible? And they'll say, I don't think so, but I'm going to try. And then there's another engineer who likes to say, no, that's not going to work, and I'm really busy, come back later. Well, there was a day where I'd learned enough to be dangerous, as I like to say, and I had an engineer push back, and I said, no, actually, I think there's a call that will give you this data, and this is what I think it is. And he looked at me and said, okay, I think you're right. He said, okay, I'll work on that.
Well,
So
yeah.
it worked in that case, and I highly encourage it for everyone.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So what's challenging about this line of work?
Oh, what isn't? I'd say the path itself is challenging, and so it's I can't think of any aspect of the role that's not challenging. You're always under constraints. So time constraints, competitive issues, budget constraints, and so you're always trying to create what is the most effective product I can deliver in the fastest amount of time with the least amount of resources, because you're never going to have infinite time and infinite resources. And so I'd say that is the challenge, is how do I work with all these constraints and deliver a product that still meets the consumer needs and works in the marketplace and is competitive. That's kind of the uber competitive aspects of the job. Day to day, I would say it is owning a product, but it's never getting your head down so much that you lose sight of what's going on in the rest of the world. And so staying abreast of what's going on in technology, what's going on in the competitive space, what's happening in all the different industries that are somewhat related to what you do, and being informed so that you don't just have your head so down in the product that you lose sight of that. And it's easy to get consumed in a product and lose sight of what's going on around you.
Right. So what is, as a parting thought, what is the future growth of someone who is in product management? Where can they go?
Sure. It's unlimited, I'll be honest. You look at a product manager, and there's certainly an individual path where they continue to become more and more senior in what they do. And they own larger and larger projects, and maybe they're coordinating the efforts of multiple people. But then if they decide, I want to move into leadership, and many do, it's a pretty common path for product managers to move into leadership. You know, there's the typical path of director to VP of product management, and even being an SVP of an entire product group, and sometimes running product design and engineering at the same time. I'm seeing more and more often in larger companies and even some mid-sized startups a chief product officer role. And so it's truly become a C-level role that's up here with the CTO that is all about product. And then eventually many product managers do get the entrepreneurial bug, and they want to start their own company. And so many of the PMs that I've worked with in the past at some point become a CEO of their own startup. So it's unlimited.
So the MBA that's graduating and wants to pursue this, which is sort of the natural path, you would recommend that they do an internship or?
Absolutely. I recommend that for anybody, I'll be honest. Even my path, I did a couple of internships. But definitely for an MBA, I think an internship is critical. It gives you a chance to essentially evaluate the company. Do I want to work at this company? And it gives the company a chance to evaluate you. And so many of our interns actually converted into full-time employees, or at least an offer to them. Great way to get your foot in the door, great way to get real-world experience, because it's very different, as everyone discovers. What you learn in the classroom and what happens when you're in a company under pressure, you learn a lot of valuable lessons. So I highly recommend internships.
Well, thank you, Larry, and thank you for listening to this presentation today.